Hello, students. Today we'll be looking at writing argumentative essays, including a claim, support, and counterclaim. So we will be looking at the TEKS. Remember, those are those Texas expectations, those learning standards. And the learning standards that we will be looking at today are explaining the author's purpose and message within a text, responding orally or in writing with the appropriate register, vocabulary, tone, and voice, analyzing how the author's use of language contributes to the mood, voice, and tone, and analyzing characteristics and structures of argumentative text. This is the big one for today, by identifying the claim and analyzing the argument, identifying and explaining the counter argument. And we're going to be looking at how these things go together in order to create an argumentative essay. So, argumentative essays will present a claim with support, that is, with evidence that supports the claim. The key components of an argumentative essay are claim, support, and counterclaim, and we'll talk about all of those today. And the goal of an argumentative essay is to convince the reader of your position. So what is a claim? A claim is the main argument or point of your essay. It should be clear, it should be specific, and it should be debatable, something that there is another side to consider. So an example might be that snow leopards should be a protected species. A statement, snow leopards are animals, or snow leopards are pretty, or snow leopards live in the wild, would not be an example of a claim. How do you support your claim? Support can include evidence and reasoning that backs your claim. Use facts, statistics, examples, or expert opinions. So for example, snow leopards face extinction because they are hunted for their fur and body parts would support the idea that snow leopards should be a protected species. I saw a snow leopard at the zoo once and it was pretty would not support our claim. Now, what are counterclaims? These can be a little tricky. Counterclaims are an opposing point of view to our own argument. In addressing counterclaims, we can strengthen our own essay by addressing the opposite side of the argument and providing a rebuttal that disproves the counterclaim. For example, some may argue that protecting snow leopards is too costly. Not protecting them now would prove even costlier because programs to bring species back from the brink of extinction are much more expensive than protecting them before they get to that level. Additionally, losing predators in an ecosystem substantially changes that ecosystem, which can cause long-term costly problems. So let's look at some possible claims that we could make. One claim might be social media has a negative impact on teenagers' mental health. So that's my claim. Now I would need support for that. I might have something like studies show increased rates of depression and anxiety. That would be good support. Now I would need more than just that one piece of support, but that would be one type of support, a study. Now, if I'm going to use that, I need to say what that study is and where it came from. Now, my counterclaim might be that social media can provide connection and support. So I would have to address that is a counterclaim, and I would have to show how the negative impact on mental health far outweighs the connection and support that social media can provide. Okay, here's another potential claim. Social media is bad. Now, that is not a strong claim because it is too vague and it lacks specificity. It doesn't tell us how social media is bad. And so the support is going to be difficult to find just for social media is bad. So, and it's too difficult because it's too broad of a topic. We need something that's more narrow and more specific that we can support. Now, a better way to state this claim might be excessive social media use negatively affects students' academic performance. Now we have specifically how social media is bad. Now I can go about supporting that claim with specific evidence. So to write an argumentative essay, you must take a stance. You have to be on one side of the argument or another. So you're going to choose one side. You're going to clearly state your position in your claim. That's that claim. Social media has negative effects on students' mental health, right? I'm specifically on one side of the argument. You're going to maintain consistency throughout your essay. You are not going to argue for both sides, okay? You can't argue that it's bad for mental health and it provides connection and support. I can't argue both. When we bring up the counterclaim, the other side of the argument, we need to make sure we show how our side of the argument is more valid or more important. Okay, so why not argue both sides? Arguing for both sides weakens your position. It confuses the reader about what your main point is, and your essay loses its persuasive power. If I'm arguing just as well for the other side, there's no reason to agree with one side or the other. Instead, address your counterclaims to strengthen your argument. Show how you are accepting that, yes, there is another side to this issue, but the point that I'm bringing, my claim, is much more important, or my claim is much more valid, or my claim is more significant than this counterclaim. So how do we structure our argument? Well, you're going to start with an introduction that has a clear claim. Your claim needs to be directly stated in your introduction. Now, your body paragraphs are going to have that supporting evidence, and you generally need 2 to 3 of those. And you're going to have one piece of support, one kind of support for your claim in each paragraph, and you're going to have evidence in each paragraph. That's that stuff I was talking about before: facts, studies, specific quotes perhaps from experts in the field, okay? That will be your supporting evidence. You're also going to address counterclaims and rebut them. So writing a rebuttal is where we talk about how, yes, there is this other side to the argument, but this is why it is not valid, or my argument is more important. And then finally, you'll have a conclusion that clearly restates your position. You're going to restate that claim one more time. Okay. Now, it's important to find strong supporting evidence. So how do we do that? Use credible sources, academic journals, reputable news outlets. You might find some different kinds of stories and articles that help support this. Google is not a source, guys. Google is a search engine. I should never see Google listed as your source, okay? But you do want to look for credible sources. Include statistics, expert opinions, real-world examples. Ensure that your evidence directly relates to your claim, right? And then explain how the evidence supports your argument. It's always important. This is the piece that often gets left out. You can have all the wonderful evidence in the world, but if you don't explain how it supports your claim, then you're leaving it up to your reader to figure it out. You don't want to leave it to your reader. You want to explain directly to your reader how your particular piece of evidence supports the claim that you've made. So how do we effectively address counterclaims in our argumentative essay? First of all, we acknowledge that there are opposing viewpoints and we do it fairly. So we don't want to lie about an opposing viewpoint or ignore an opposing viewpoint. So we look at them fairly. We explain why our own argument is stronger. So why is your argument stronger? Why is your argument more important? We're going to use evidence to refute counterclaims. So we can't just say our argument is more important or has greater impact. We have to use evidence to explain why that is. And finally, we need to show that we have considered multiple perspectives and we're not just dismissing them. What are some common mistakes in argumentative writing? Well, first of all, using emotional appeals instead of logic. So trying to play on the emotions of your reader rather than looking at the logical impact of your argument. Ignoring opposing viewpoints, not including that counterclaim. Failing to provide sufficient evidence. So offering a claim or a counterclaim, but not including evidence to support what you're saying, or not including enough evidence to support what you're saying. One piece of evidence isn't going to be sufficient. You're going to need a few, and you need different types of evidence. So facts, statistics, expert opinion, studies. And then finally, making overgeneralized claims, like we saw with the one claim that said social media is bad. That's too broad, it's too overgeneralized. So we want to be specific in the claim that we are making. So some tips for having strong argumentative essays. Well, first of all, research thoroughly before writing. Make sure you keep track of those sources so that you can include a sources cited page. And a reminder, Google's not a source. Google is a search engine. And anything that starts wiki, like Wikipedia, is not a reliable source. Organize your thoughts with an outline. That's a great place to start. You might decide to use that I format to take your notes. You might use your races format to help you kind of outline what you're going to say, whatever works best for you, but you definitely want to outline your ideas and thoughts. Use transition words to connect ideas. So you're not just going to state things, but you're going to use words like, for example, or this explains, or this shows that, this proves, the next thing to consider, right? We're going to use those transition words that help connect your ideas. And then finally, revise and edit for clarity and for coherence. We want to make sure that our ideas are clear, people can understand them. And coherence means that each paragraph contains one main idea and only one main idea. So if I'm talking about the snow leopards and I'm talking about how they are hunted, and that's one reason why we need to make sure that they are a protected species, then that whole paragraph is going to talk about how hunting them, it might have some information about who's doing it and why they're doing it and how it's hurting them. But I'm not going to talk about encroachment on their ecosystem because people are moving into the areas where they roam. That is not going to be in that paragraph about being hunted. So we're going to make sure that our paragraphs are coherent. They stick together well. Now, identifying claims and support here. Let's do that. Let's look at these three items and decide if they are claims or support. The first one, homework should be banned in schools. Now, this is a claim. One of the ways we know it's a claim is that word should. Okay? You are saying what should be, or could be, or needs to be. That's your claim. Okay? The thing that you say in your article, that main idea about that you're putting in your argumentative essay, and it's going to be stated somewhat like that. Okay? Evidence. Studies show that excessive homework can lead to stress. Okay, that would be a form of support. It would be studies. Now, if I were going to include that, I would have to say who did those studies or where I got the information about this study. And it might be that you are quoting an article, so you would include the information about that article. Like in a New York Times article from March 2023, indicated that studies shows that excessive homework can lead to stress. Okay, then that would be support. Many students struggle to balance homework and extracurriculars. Yes, that is an example of why homework should be banned in schools. And we would need to know who is saying that many students struggle to balance homework and extracurriculars. Where did that information come from? And then if we can explain that, we explain why that supports this idea that homework should be banned, and then it would be considered good support. So some key components of an argumentative essay. First, it needs to be clear and specific, our claim. Clear, specific claim. Strong supporting evidence. So we need to make sure the evidence that we've chosen does definitely directly supports our claim, and also that it is good evidence. In other words, it didn't come from an unreliable source. Okay. We want to make sure that we have addressed counterclaims with rebuttals. Okay, we can't just say other people say this. We have to rebut what the other side of the argument is. We want to make sure that we are using logical reasoning and structure. Again, that idea of having coherence, making sure that each paragraph covers one main idea and that we're using logic. And finally, we want to make sure that we have a consistent stance throughout. We are not going to argue for both sides of the argument.